Yes, dear friends, today's our topic is medical disorders of pregnancy. See, nowadays marriage occurs at late age rather. अभी सबको पढ़ना है, सबको सेटल होना है और उसके बाद में मैरिज इज नॉट द प्रायोरिटी नाउ. पहले के ज़माने में जो हमारे सीनियर हमारे वडील थे वो ऐसे ही 18 साल में या 20 साल में तो मैरिज करवा देते थे. लेकिन नाउ एट प्रेजेंट इन दिस एरा लड़के लड़की जो है वो खुद कुछ न कुछ सोचते हैं, कुछ न कुछ डिसाइड करते हैं. सभी जगह पर नहीं है लेकिन कई लोगों को देर आर मेनी लेवल्स ऑफ दिस वन इन द सोसाइटी and so many of them do marriage at later age, and of course the pregnancy is also at later age. And so the data says that pregnancy rates in women over 40 age increased 65% between 1990 to 2008. अब क्या हुआ होगा? ये तो 2008 का डेटा है, अभी इससे भी ज़्यादा होगा. तो and this the age advanced age of the for the pregnancy lead to many medical disorders or many complications in the pregnancy. It might be there that the diabetes mellitus or thyroid or any other thing, maybe from initially they may be having these disorders and then pregnancy occurs. So both the things we have to look out, and now we will go through it one by one. Medical disorders of pregnancy is increasing, and so why? This is the result. This is the reason we have already told. The effects of disease on pregnancy, on mother and on fetus, both in the same thing. Disease effect of the pregnancy on the disease, both we have to taken care of. The disorders are becoming common, and what do we really rarely see? Some rarely diseases may occur during pregnancy, that also we have to look after. And these are the challenging situation for not only for the obstetrician but for the patient and physician also. These are some of the medical disorders: asthma, cystic fibrosis, hypertension, arrhythmias, valvular diseases like cardiomyopathy, cyanotic heart disease, VSD, ASD, pulmonary hypertension, epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, benign cranial tumors or obstetric cholestasis, acute fatty liver of the pregnancy, IBS, Crohn's disease, thrombophilias, VTE, antiphospholipid syndrome, SLE, rheumatoid arthritis, anemia, diabetes, hyper or hypothyroidism, adrenal disease, and of course cancer also. So I will represent one case and then we will decide the treatment or management accordingly. 35-year-old patient, G3P1L1, previous 1 LSCS 10 years back. At 35 weeks gestation by EDD with the twins, conceived after 3 cycles of ovulation induction, and cervical circlet done at 7 months of gestation, with history of high-grade fever with chills and body ache for 2 days. She conceived after ovulation induction cycle. So conceived after treatment of sterility, and it is high risk patient or precious pregnancy patient. Patient also complains of difficulty in breathing. There is no history of progressive intermittent pain, thank God, or leaking and bleeding per vagina. She has complained of, at present she is afebrile, GC is guarded, mild bilateral pedal edema was there, breast and thyroid normal, pulse 94 and blood pressure 140 by 100. See, the differential diagnosis will be dengue febrile illness in pregnancy or preeclampsia with dengue febrile illness, because the high blood pressure is high. Hemoglobin is 7.4, so anemic also. TC 11,500 and platelet count 22,000, so it is very less. Bilirubin and is normal. Dengue NS1 is positive. So confirmed diagnosis of dengue febrile illness. HIV and VDRL negative, and this time also she is having twin. If a person is coming from endemic or epidemic area, travel to us or change the city and come to us, then we should see for the nausea, vomiting, rash, aches, pain, and tourniquet test, leukopenia, or any other warning sign. Nausea will be there in pregnancy, but we should defer the diagnosis from pregnancy vomiting and vomiting because of other causes. If there are abdominal pain or tenderness, persistent vomiting after giving our obstetric medicines for the vomiting, then also it persists. Then clinical fluid accumulation, mucosal bleeding, lethargy, restlessness, and liver enlargement, then these are the warning signs, and we should consult physician also. For any medical disorder, we are not the sole judge. We should include physician for this medical management of the disease. The complications are liver dysfunction, significant bleeding, coagulopathy, altered sensorium, renal dysfunction, respiratory failure, ARDS or DIC. But we should take care of obstetric complications, that is preterm birth. We should give isoxsuprine, half 40 milligram SR, sustained release, half BD, twice a day rather, after meal, after lunch and after dinner. Low birth weight, we should give iron, calcium, protein, everything. For oligohydramnios, progesterone should be given to prevent antepartum and postpartum hemorrhage, adequate rest and adequate control of dengue fever. For fetal distress and miscarriages, same thing we have to taken care of. Intrauterine death, to prevent it, physician's guidance and proper care of the medical disease. At present here dengue fever should be taken care of, properly managed. Where will you admit this patient? At our hospital or at physician? It is according to the disease of the patient, according to the weeks of the patient. At present, in this patient, we can admit the patient to a physician's hospital, because first we have to take care of the disease. We should control the disease, and then if the bleeding starts also, we can shift the patient to our hospital. If labor starts, then and then only. Steroids to be given if needed for the dengue fever, but it should also be given to for the premature baby. We will intervene or not intervene at this gestation. It should be decided. If it occurs at 25 weeks, we should not intervene. But at 37 weeks, this patient is having 37 weeks pregnancy with twins. If there is a control of the disease, then we can go. If there are signs suggesting any harm to the fetus, then we should intervene in between. Cervical circlage stitch should be cut once the disease is controlled, and there are chances of starting of labor with this febrile illness and contraction again. So we should cut the cervical circlage stitch once the patient becomes a febrile, or if labor starts, or if there are contractions. What will be your choice of mode of delivery? Of course, most of the time normal delivery, but for the twins, in this patient there is twins, so we can go for the cesarean section if this is for the obstetric indication, not for the medical indication at present. If there is breach, what will we do? If there is transverse line, what can we do? Only the cesarean will be the answer. What preparations you will do before planning delivery? This delivery or this patient should be treated as HDU, जहाँ मल्टी स्पेशलिटी हो उसी हॉस्पिटल में ये पेशेंट की डिलीवरी होनी चाहिए. Intensive care should be given and everything should be ready with physician, with pediatrician and obstetrician also. 80% of the viral infections of dengue viral infection are patients are asymptomatic, 20% are symptomatic, and the lifespan of the disease is up to 1 to 4 days. This is the febrile phase, and having fever, headache, tunicate test positive, dehydration may be there, and WBC low. The from fifth to onwards, fifth day onwards, there might be critical phase or patient recover. In critical phase, fever starts subsiding, but the warning signs appear. What we think previously, what we thought of, maybe shock, bleeding, uh, and multi-factor and involvement, multi-organ involvement will be there. Platelet will be low, of course. HCT rise. If there is recovery phase, well and good. Otherwise, it may worsen and obstetric management come into picture. This is the FOXI guideline. But again I say that you are not the sole management authority. So consult your physician and then both of you just treat the fever and obstetric complication. So this is for the physician one. Our part will be afterwards. We should treat and correct coagulopathy, overt bleeding irrespective of lab values. Platelet count इतना low नहीं है, फिर भी there may be bleeding. There may be the starting of bleeding, and so we have to give injection ethamsil 6 hourly intramuscular. Complete bed rest and everything will be there. Performance of any invasive procedures or surgical intervention, we should proceed for this one. Platelet count less than 50,000, platelet transfusion should be given. Fibrinogen less than 1, then cryo-PPT should be given. Prothrombin time and activated partial thromboplastin time, that is APTT, more than 1.5 to 1.8 times control, then FFP 10 to 20 ml per kg should be given to raise the platelet immediately. Vitamin K to be given IV. Recombinant factor 7A given in the dose of 60 microgram per kg. Use of thromboelastogram useful for the global status of clotting, and that should be done before proceeding for the cesarean section. It will be helpful to have how many types of components or what amount of blood we will require in cesarean section. Now we will go for the another medical disorder. Dear friends, we will talk about gestational diabetes mellitus. It's a common medical complication. Natural increase in hyperglycemic hormone and anti-insulin enzyme in normal pregnancy. But this abnormal glucose, these hyperglycemic effects of pregnancy hormones are not adequately compensated. If it is, then it will lead to abnormal glucose tolerance and GDM. It imposes risk on both mother and fetus. Some long-term risks are also there. Mother may get lifetime diabetes mellitus, and child also suffer from lifetime complication. Importance of early risk stratification and diagnosis and therapeutic interventions are important for this thing. In India, 1 in 10 pregnancy has diabetes and 90% of them are GDM. See, iceberg. Every time मुझे ये बोलना पड़ता है. That is also in Tamil Nadu and Kashmir highest incidence or prevalence. 17.8% in urban, 13.8% in semi-urban, and 9.9% in rural areas. Rather, we can say that one in every 5 pregnant women will have GDM. Now at present it is 1 in 10, but now onwards it will be 1 in every 5 pregnant women. If we have not taken care of our lifestyle and not taken care of GDM earlier, then the incidence will increase, the prevalence will increase. Impaired glucose tolerance with onset और फर्स्ट रिकॉग्निशन ड्यूरिंग प्रेगनेंसी. जो पहले है, अगर उसको जेस्टेशनल डायबिटीज, जिसको डायबिटीज पहले से ही है बिफोर प्रेगनेंसी, इट इज नॉट कॉल्ड जेस्टेशनल डायबिटीज. And women diagnosed with GDM might have normal glucose tolerance prior to pregnancy, which becomes abnormal with pregnancy and returns to normal following delivery. She may have mild glucose intolerance before pregnancy, which worsens during pregnancy. And previously undiagnosed type 2 diabetes, previously undiagnosed type 1 diabetes, it is rare thing. Still, they may need our attention. There is wide classification. There are class A to class J. Many are there. But that is for diabetes, not for gestational diabetes. So, only class A is important to us, and it is with modification. So, what is the modification? The diabetes which began during pregnancy that we all know. Class A1 is gestational diabetes controlled by the diet, and in A2 it is controlled by the medicine. So this is class 1 and class 2. Another classification, National Diabetic Data Group, NDDG. There are many short forms we are using, and we are confusing also in this one, but still it is necessary. So NDDG classification says that type 1 insulin dependent, type 2 non-insulin dependent, type 3 gestational diabetes, it is GDM, type 4 impaired glucose tolerance, IGT. These are various classifications, and we will use the data accordingly. About pathogenesis. It is a facilitated anabolism and accelerated catabolism, rather starvation, and this leads to gestational diabetes. See, the placenta produces hormones, estrogen, cortisol, and human placental lactogen, and it will lead to inhibition on functioning of insulin. And आगे blood glucose level is increased because of that. And if blood glucose level increase, then it brings extra glucose to baby, and this is the cause for baby to put on extra weight. What are the risk factors? Age 25 से ज़्यादा, it's okay. Obesity, BMI more than 25, of course it is risk factor. All Indians fall in this category, high risk ethnic group. Previously unexplained perinatal loss or macrosomic baby, or previous polyhydramnios, birth of a malinformed infant, previous GDM or PCOD, and metabolic syndrome, diabetes on first degree relative. All these are the risk factors and can lead to GDM. So in this type of patients, we should have extra watch, extra vigilance. GDM have its effect on mother and fetus both. In mother, spontaneous abortion, polyhydramnios, preeclampsia, preterm delivery, increased operative delivery, and perineal trauma, and may lead to PPH. risk for future diabetes also, that I already told that approximately 50% of the patients having GDM, by 5 years of time, they become positive with diabetes mellitus. For the fetus, macrosomia, all of you know, birth trauma because of the large size, prematurity also, and neonatal metabolic complications like hypoglycemia, hyperbilirubinemia, hypocalcemia, and polycythemia. And for this polycythemia, we should not take time to cut the cord. ये हम आगे देखेंगे. Sudden IUD is the worst outcome. Obesity, diabetes in the later life to fetus, and respiratory distress syndrome and shoulder dystocia. RDS is the main reason of death after the delivery. Congenital malformations are extremely uncommon in GDM because it usually develops in pregnancy long after organogenesis is complete. So congenital malformations are not there, but still the rate of death increases. We told about macrosomia. It is termed large for gestational age, again short term, LGA. In American College of Obstetrics, they count cutoff point as 4.5. But for our India, no validate cutoff for us. But still, we consider 4 kgs reasonable as a cutoff point. Stillbirth, death after delivery or before, no, after delivery. Stillbirth rate just after delivery if the fetus expire. Stillbirth rate in GDM is greater than that of the general population. It is mainly related to excess fetal growth consequent to hyperglycemia and hyperinsulinemia. These are the main reason for that. And it depends on the severity of diabetes and adequacy of metabolic control. This is most necessary, and we can prevent this one by adequate control. However, fetal growth restriction can also contribute to stillbirth. Causes of intrauterine death. पहले stillbirth की बात हुई. Now intrauterine death are also more common. Prior vascular complications in second trimester. When uterine artery flow or placental flow are impaired so much, if the diabetes is not taken care of, not diagnosed, then it will lead to second trimester death because of undiagnosed or uncontrolled GDM. Hyperinsulinemia is, you very well know, chronic intrauterine hypoxia, ketoacidosis, and preeclampsia are the reason for IUD. Why there is hypoxia? Increased O2 consumption, we already know that before. Increased oxygen consumption and decreased arterial O2 in uterine artery and placental circulation lead to increased O2 and decreased arterial O2 oxygen, and then chronic intrauterine hypoxia will be there. It is created and it leads to intrauterine death or stillbirth. Offspring of the women with GDM are at 4 to 8 times higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. ये बात हमने पहले की कि ये बेबी को भी, ये फीटस को भी in their life they have 4 to 8 times higher risk. Not only that, but higher risk of developing obesity, metabolic syndrome also. See, metabolic problem in the neonate. First is hypoglycemia. This occurs due to abrupt cessation of delivery of maternal glucose to a neonate whose insulin levels are high following exposure to chronic maternal hyperglycemia during pregnancy. And it will lead to immediate stoppage of this one, lead to hypoglycemia. Impaired fetal lung maturation it is delayed. Yeah, lung maturation is delayed due to reduced surfactant production. Lung surfactant is the most relevant thing, most required thing after birth. Secondary to hyperglycemia and hyperinsulinemia. Poorly controlled diabetes in pregnancy is an important risk factor for RDS. RDS ये कोई एक्सप्लोसिव बात नहीं है, लेकिन इट इज एक्सप्लोसिव थिंग फॉर द life of the baby. So there are screening for the GDM and there should be diagnosis of GDM. I already mentioned in previous lectures also that what is difference between screening and diagnosis. In thyroid also I have explained this one, so I am not repeating here. Whom to screen, when to screen, how to screen, all answers will be given in next slides. Asian Indians are a high risk ethnic group. Again I am telling this one. And so all pregnant Indian women need to be screened for GDM. All. This is the screening, not the diagnosis. This is the screening for GDM in pregnancy. It develops during late second trimester and late third trimester. So if screening is delayed, pre-existing diabetes or early detection missed. First trimester screening baseline. हमको पहले फर्स्ट विजिट पर एक बार तो ये करना ही है. Then afterwards it will be act as a baseline report. Glucose challenge test is a two-step screening. Oral glucose tolerance test OGTT remains the gold standard. There are many other things are there also. One is DIPSI. First one at the first contact visit. If negative, repeat at 24 to 28 weeks. The guideline is after giving 75 gram of oral glucose, then after 2 hours of it, check the glucose level and irrespective of meal status performed at the initial visit. ये फर्स्ट विजिट में कुछ मील लिया नहीं लिया, FBS fasting, PPBS nothing. You just give 75 gram of oral glucose to patient and then after 2 hours you check the glucose sample, and if 2 hours value more than 140 milligram, then you can stamp it as GDM. In OGTT, oral glucose tolerance test, 100 grams of glucose and various instructions are there. Previous 3 days normal diet and overnight fasting and collect fasting blood sugar and PPBS and everything. Now we go for this one. In NDDG, fasting should be 105, 1 hour after it 190, 2 hours after meal it is 165, and 3 hours after the meal PPBS should be 145. This is the criteria or cutoff level. Same with the WHO criteria and IADPSG criteria. Means this is 75 grams वाली बात जो बताई वो. It is at par as such. 5-10 मिलीग्राम आगे पीछे जो है इस तरह से, बाकी it all are at par. But none of these criteria are based upon actual pregnancy outcome. And so HEPO study came up and this above one IADPSG criteria were developed, and GDM if 1 hour value is abnormal, either fasting or 1 hour or 2 hour, anyone, these three, ये जो 3 है उसमें से कोई भी एक एबनॉर्मल हो, ऐसा नहीं कि तीनों एबनॉर्मल होना चाहिए, only one is abnormal, then also you can stamp it as GDM. What is HEPO study? It is a short form, nothing else. Hyperglycemia and pregnancy outcomes. It is HEPO study. Studied more than 25,000 pregnant women from 9 countries from 24 to 32 weeks onwards, and there is strong association between maternal glucose levels below those diagnostic of diabetes and adverse outcomes. So this is HEPO study. How to manage? We should, in any of the medical disorder, there should be medical management and there should be obstetrical management too. So regarding medical management, nutritional therapy, MNT आगे आगे MNT आए तो वो मेडिकल न्यूट्रिशन थेरेपी है, एक्सरसाइज, इंसुलिन थेरेपी एंड ओरल एंटी डायबिटिक्स. फॉर ऑब्स्टेटिक we will go ahead and we'll see. Foremost is to consider it as a high risk pregnancy and have frequent antenatal visit. Then and then we can control well. For nutrition, it is a cornerstone of GDM management. Some women with GDM manage their glucose less effectively with MNT alone. So they require another things, means exercise and medication. What is the principle? Healthy eating during pregnancy, individualized nutrition assessment and GDM to control BMI, and calories to count for GDM. ये मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी अप्रोच है. मैंने पहले भी थायराइड में बताया, डोंट साई टू कॉल एनी अदर स्पेशलिस्ट. सेम थिंग here, diabetologist, here physician and nutritionalist, dietitian help you should require, and we can guide and counsel patient accordingly. See, all this is, there is no time with you, or if or dietitian can make it very simpler for them. Diabetic diet and role of dietitian. Normal, if there is a normal weight, 30 kilocalorie per kg per day should be taken. In overweight, 24 kilocalorie per kg per day. In obese patient, only 12 kilocalorie per kg per day should be consumed. So it is distributed in 3 meals: breakfast, lunch and dinner 25%, lunch 30%, and dinner 30%, and 3 snacks, small frequent 6 courses to be taken. Same carbohydrate 40 to 50%, proteins 20 to 25%, and fat 30 to 40%. इस तरह से ये बताने से नहीं होगा पेशेंट को. हमको सिंप्लीफाई करके उनको बताना होगा कि क्या खाए, क्या ना खाए, कितना खाए, किस में से कितनी कैलोरी मिलती है, और वो उसको तैयार चार्ट स्पून फीड करना होता है. एंड सो डायटिशियन इज necessary for them. Maternal weight gain is as important measure in follow-up visits to determine energy intake is adequate to support fetal growth, or it may be inadequate, or there is too much increase of weight. So it is the main thing to take consideration. Weight gain targets for pregnancy are based on women प्री-प्रेगनेंसी BMI. ये भी डायटिशियन को ही ज्यादा पता चलेगा. Hypocaloric diets in obese women with GDM can result in ketonemia and ketonuria. It is very bad thing. It will lead to stillbirth or IUD. Moderate, not only this one, but it is a threat to health of the women also. Moderate caloric restriction in obese women with GDM may improve glycemic control without ketonemia and reduce maternal weight gain. About exercise, complementary dietary recommendation इसके साथ में और डाइट के साथ में एक्सरसाइज. It is planned moderate physical activity of 30 to 45 minutes per day is recommended. Special watches to assess the steps and its correlation with amount of physical activity. ग्लाइसेमिक टारगेट की बात जो है, ये अकॉर्डिंग टू डिप्सी फास्टिंग शुड बी 90 और लेस देन 90, and 2 hour. In DIPSI, we don't count for 1 hour. After 2 hour, it is 120 or less than 120, it will be normal. If it is more, then we can claim, we can stamp at GDM, and we should have more watch on these patients. For insulin therapy, we can give multiple daily injections or continuous subcutaneous insulin infusion. It is CSII, not CS2. So by the pump, it is the short form of all this. And for this thing, physician is the better person to control the sugar level. These are various recommendations: regular human insulin or NPH insulin, rapid acting insulin, premix insulin or long acting insulin. There are various forms, and which should be given to which patient to control this level. It is the job of physician, not us. Give 2/3 of daily insulin requirement, ratio of regular insulin to NPH insulin. These are various things to be taken care of by physician. We should know this thing is to be individualized, and no convincing evidence for the superiority of one insulin regimen over another. PPBS value needs special attention. May have elevation of just PPBS, single dose of regular insulin before meal may suffice. If the fasting glucose levels are high, NPH insulin given at bedtime. After lunch or after dinner glucose levels are high, then regular insulin may need to be added before this meal. These are just the guideline, but better control is implemented by the physician. CSII pump in pregnancy, that I told you, CSII, continuous subcutaneous insulin infusion. It is still experimental level, but it has advantage of reduced rate of hypoglycemia, improved glycemic control, easier dose adjustments, and reduced variability in insulin absorption. It is just expensive. It is the disadvantage. Otherwise, we can implement it as per need. Another drug is glibenclamide. Unlike other sulfonylureas, does not cross the placental barrier, and probably due to high degree of protein binding, so fetal exposure is minimal, and it is better thing. Glibenclamide was not detected in the cord serum as it doesn't pass the placenta, so it is not detected in the cord serum, and it is better for the fetus. Another drug is acarbose. GIT side effect of severe flatulence is there, and still it is effective, but still we are not using this one. There are not enough evidence that for safety and efficacy of other oral hypoglycemic agents. These 2 or 3 are known. But about the obstetric management, we should monitor the diabetes in pregnancy very well. Follow-up care and long-term considerations in GDM also should be taken care of. For monitor, self-monitoring of blood glucose. Patient can self-monitor herself. Or to do HbA1c. It gives 3 months result. What is the condition of 3 months glucose level in patient? It gives HB. It is we can find it with HbA1c. Serum fructosamine or continuous glucose monitoring system we can add. Measurement of fetal abdominal circumference. It is feasible. It is seen by abdominal sonography. Glucometer should be with the patient, and it is done, glucose checkup should be done 4 times to 6 times a day. However, it is diet related, can be done less frequently also. And another seventh one it is said that blood glucose should also be occasionally tested around 3 a.m. to detect nocturnal hypoglycemia. While all women with GDM should preferably perform SMBG, in case this is not feasible, frequent lab tests should be required for fasting and PPBS. I already told that it gives it helps us to differentiate GDM from pre-existing diabetes because it gives us 3 months result. So if it is high in the first trimester, this result is high, then we can say that it is not GDM, it is pre-existing diabetes. Maybe spuriously increased consequent to iron deficiency anemia. ये भी साथ में हीमोग्लोबिन लेवल भी ध्यान रखना है हमको. Abdominal circumference, AC, we call it. By standard ultrasound, in second or early third trimester, we should measure it. Repeated every 2 to 4 weeks can help guide management decisions. FGR है कि नहीं, लार्ज फोर डेट है कि नहीं, ये सब हमको एब्डोमिनल सर्कमफेरेंस से पता चलेगा. एंड ऑब्स्टेट्रिक मैनेजमेंट उस पर डिपेंड करता है. बट देयर शुड बी एक्यूरेट अल्ट्रासाउंड मैनेजमेंट मेजरमेंट with senior person. At antenatal visits, we measure blood pressure. We ask for the very first time, we ask menstrual history and date of LMP, weight measurement every time, dietary advice, HbA1c or optimization of the glycemic control, renal function tests like creatinine, albumin creatinine ratio, retinal examination if required, counseling for risk of congenital anomalies, and USG for fetal viability and dating is required for the first time and frequently also. In third trimester, same BP, weight, urine albumin, USG for the fetal growth, Leica volume, fetal viability and Doppler parameters and NST also. Dietary advice and monitor glycemic control. For the delivery, timing of it depends on severity and duration of GDM as well as comorbidities. अगर साथ में कुछ और भी है, थायराइड भी है, रादर हाइपोथायरॉयडिज्म भी है, और एनीथिंग एल्स कार्डियक थिंग और BMI ज़्यादा है, then we should taken care of all other things also. We need to balance risk of prematurity and RDS against risk of late intrauterine fetal death and macrosomia. In women on insulin delivery at 38 completed weeks, we can go ahead. If it is diet control GDM, we can prolong up to 40 weeks. Whether we should admit the patient, it is not needed as such, but for the screening or but for the investigation or to control the level, if we can admit, it's okay. Vaginal delivery is safe and no contraindication for vaginal delivery. That is also the same suggestive thing. Induction of labor is safe option. Previous obstetric history of increased weight or other clinical factors. If there is any obstetric indication, then and then you go for LSCS. Otherwise, rate of sepsis, rate of increased hyperglycemia will be there. Monitor will be we should look out for monitoring more clinically. If there is planned vaginal delivery, the night before the same dose given, morning dose can be given with light meals. What is planned vaginal delivery? I think if we expect the mother, if she says that there is some contraction, there is mild pain, and if on PV examination we find that there is some dilatation, at that time, the night before the same dose given, Morning dose can be given with light meals, blood sugar tested, normal saline infusion started, and in it 10 units of soluble insulin to be added in each pint. Hourly blood glucose monitoring to be maintained between 100 to 110 milligram. If it is unplanned, just patient came, insulin dose as per sugar level we should administer. मैंने पहले ही बताया, claim the code early to prevent polycythemia. जैसे ही बेबी आउट आता है, यूजुअली अवर ट्रेडिशन क्या है कि हम ब्लड को आने देते हैं, पुश होने देते हैं अंदर और फिर क्लेम करते हैं, कोड को क्लेम करते हैं. लेकिन इन जीडीएम पेशेंट वी शुड claim the code earliest. We should evaluate vitals and Apgar score at 1 and 5 minutes. A known and skilled pediatrician should be present at that time. Monitor heart rate, respiratory rate, color and motor activity for at least 24 hours after birth. Promote early breastfeeding. Capillary blood glucose level of the fetus, of the neonate, should be done at 1 hour after delivery and before each of the first 4 breastfeed. Value should be less than 36 milligram. If it is, then it warrant treatment. Top feed should be given, glucose water or IV dextrose will be needed. Check calcium level on day 2 in macrosomic infants. Higher antibiotics is needed to the GDM patient. Diabetes resolves after delivery in most cases, but higher antibiotics are needed in LSCS or if episiotomy has been given and for long days. If usually we give for 5 days, in this one, to this patient we should give at least for 7 days and higher one. Insulin requirements usually come down completely or reduce significantly. However, it can persist in 5 to 10% cases. It may represent undiagnosed pre-existing diabetes, may be there. This can be ruled out by performing a few capillary blood glucose measurement in the first few days after delivery. And all women with GDM should undergo 100 gram OGTT 6 weeks after delivery to classify glycemic status. 6 weeks. Recurrence will be there in 1/3 of women. In next pregnancy, GDM will recur. And risk is higher in older women, multiparous women, and higher inter-pregnancy weight gain. In between जो weight gain ज़्यादा है, then it will recur. During lactation, progesterone only pills are safer than COC, oral contraceptive. And depot medroxyprogesterone acetate, DMPA, increases risk of subsequent diabetes from weight gain. So it is not used. Mirena can be used, copper T. Barrier and other methods are best. We should counsel the patient preconceptionally before this and for the next pregnancy regarding congenital anomalies, perinatal mortality, diabetic complications in pregnancy, obstetric complications, and inheritance of diabetes in offspring. What a diabetic pregnancy involves? It requires frequent antenatal visit and close supervision, strict blood glucose control, appropriate diet and lifestyle modification, folic acid supplementation as usual, contraception till optimal glycemic control will be achieved, and low dose aspirin in selected cases will be needed. So, pregnant women with diabetes should perform frequent SMBG and adjust therapy accordingly. More frequent and intense obstetric monitoring is indicated. Timing and mode of delivery is dictated mainly by the obstetric indications. Following delivery, most GDMs can stop insulin. However, they need a follow-up OGTT after 6 weeks and lifelong observation for development of type 2 diabetes. Thank you, friend. Yes, dear friends, there are two major things. One, gestational diabetes, and the other one is thyroid disease in pregnancy. So, what we will discuss today is current scientific evidence, physiological changes in early pregnancy and relevant pathophysiology, strategies for success from the experts, evidence plus experience, and practical based scenario. This is most important part of this thing. So there is FOXI guideline decided in 2019 and NICE guideline also there, assessment and management. Both of these books are available also, online available also. You can refer it anywhere, anytime. But why we discuss thyroid disorders in pregnancy? The reason is thyroid disease is capital of the world, India, and 80 million approximately are suffering from thyroid disease also in pregnancy. So it is a one of the largest number of preterm births in the world is because of this one. Subclinical disease is then 10x more common than overt hyperthyroidism, and it truly exhibits an iceberg phenomenon. See, the thyroid dysfunction, the one of the parameter, overt hypothyroidism in 7% and subclinical hypothyroidism 135 patients are having in 200 in this study. 13.5% are having subclinical hypothyroidism. What is the impact of thyroid dysfunction on pregnancy? There may be, this is the list: pregnancy loss, preterm labor, preterm delivery, gestational hypertension, preeclampsia, diabetes, placental abruption, placenta previa, premature rupture of membrane, cesarean, IUGR, low birth weight babies, low Apgar score of the babies, small for gestational age, and neonatal death. Till this, subclinical hypothyroidism in pregnancy can produce all this or lead to this thing. So again we said it a iceberg. There may be complication. If it is hyperthyroidism, then fetal growth retardation, preterm birth, craniosynostosis, premature skeletal maturation, that the anterior fontanelle or posterior fontanelle close before the time, cardiac failure, hydrops fetalis, and IUFD. This is fetal and neonatal complication. Previously we have discussed maternal complication, and in hypothyroidism now, here it is wrongly written hyper at both places, but here in about the hypothermia there should be hypothyroidism. It may lead to hypothermia in the baby, congenital jaundice, irregular bowel movements, it may be lethargic, large fontanelle, umbilical hernia, macroglossia, and cretinism IQ. These are all are the factors, maybe because of overt or subclinical hyperthyroidism. See now the change. What is the impact of pregnancy on thyroid gland physiology? Till now we have seen what is the impact of thyroid in pregnancy. Now we are discussing, see the physiological changes in thyroid gland because of the pregnancy. Increased renal iodine clearance and decreased plasma iodine level and placental iodine transport to the fetus lead to iodine deficiency in women, decreased T4, increased thyroid stimulating hormone TSH, and goiter formation. Increased O2 consumption by the fetoplacental unit lead to increased BMI and first trimester increase in HCG. increase lead to increase free T4 T3 level, decrease basal TSH level, and increase serum thyroid binding globulin TBG, lead to increased T4 T3. Both of these HCG and TBG lead to increased T4 T3, increased plasma volume lead to increased T4 T3, inner ring deiodinization of T4 and T3 by placenta lead to accelerated rates of T4 T3 degradation and production. These all are changes in thyroid gland. What is the reference range in adult non-pregnant women? T3 60 to 175 nanogram, and free T3 230 to 620, T4 4.6 to 12 microgram, and free T4 0.8 to 1.7 nanogram, TSH usually 0.5 to 5 unit, international unit, milli international unit. But in pregnancy, first trimester, it is divided according to trimester. All pregnant women should be screened at first antenatal visit by measuring TSH level. It is screening. We have discussed in previous lecture that what is screening and what is diagnostic method. Again, I am repeating here that screening is that there is no any complaint in the patient, and we screen or we rather investigate each and every patient without any symptom. That is called screening. If the patient has any symptom and then we do any test, it is diagnostic test. And if we rule out, if we do any test to rule out, that is called screening method. The levels of TSH and cutoff value of this is trimester specific. So in first trimester, 2.5 milliunit should be there. See, in non-pregnant, it is up to 5. But in pregnant patient, the level are different, and that is also trimester specific. This is the main slide. You just know this level by heart. Second trimester 3, and third trimester also it is 3 milliunit of TSH levels. We go according to cases. The 27-year-old primigravida, first visit at 6 week, ultrasound is normal corresponding to growth, and HB, CBC, HIV, all other investigations are within normal limit. Free T4 is 0.5, so it's okay. TSH 12 milliunit, so it is a overt hypothyroidism. All overt hypothyroidism with TSH more than 2.5 milliunit should be treated. That's for all. And for overt hypothyroidism, LT4 dose should be 1.6 to 2 microgram per kg per day. Maintain the target TSH level 2.5 or less than that. In regular TSH monitoring every 4 to 6 weeks until mid gestation, and at least once near the 28 weeks gestation. We should repeat it at that level, at that time, and we have to correlate with the new level, new gestational level. In case 2, it is 20-year-old primigravida, present at 9 weeks, clinical examination and other investigation, everything within normal limit, free T4 0.7 and TSH 4 milliunit. So it is somewhat more. In first trimester it should be 2.5, but here it is 4. In the first case it was 12, so it is over 1, and without any anything waiting for any other thing, we should start it. But now the scenario is different. It is 4. It is higher. In this one, TPO antibodies are come in the picture in case of subclinical hypothyroidism. autoantibodies will be produced against thyroid peroxidase, that is TPO, thyrotropin receptor, thyroglobulin, and the normal level of TPO is less than 35 international unit. And anti-TPO antibodies are raised in pregnancy, and other than the pregnancy are OC pills or HRT if patient is taking, tamoxifen, that is for the breast cancer, and liver disease if patient is having liver disease, then also her TPO will be raised. If TSH is more than 10 and TPO antibody positive women with a TSH between 4 to 10, LT4 is recommended. Means treatment is recommended for this one. LT4 can be considered if TPO AB negative, TPO is negative, and TSH 4 to 10, between 4 to 10. TPO AB positive and TSH 2.5 to 4. So, if in the patient, if TPO is negative, antibody is negative, and TSH between 4 to 10, we should start LT4 treatment. But if it is positive and it is between 2.5 to 4, then also we should start the treatment. Same thing, here it is also written TPO AB positive women with a TSH between 4 to 10, then also we should start. So, between 2.5 to 10 or 4 to 10, we should start the treatment in positive. In negative also, if it is 4 to 10, between 4 to 10, then we should start the treatment for thyroid dysfunction. Women with thyroid autoimmunity who are euthyroid in the early stages of pregnancy are at risk of developing hypothyroidism at any time in the next trimesters. So, should be monitored with TSH at least once and in every trimester, at least up to second trimester. So, इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि first trimester for the first visit, don't miss TSH to do. And in the second trimester also, once you do the TSH, that if euthyroid patient turn into hypothyroidism, then we can judge and we can diagnose it at earlier stages. LT4 therapy can be considered in euthyroid pregnant women with TPO antibody positive and history of pregnancy loss. यूथायरॉयड भी पेशेंट है लेकिन उसको टीपीओ एंटीबॉडी पॉजिटिव है एंड प्रीवियस लॉस की हिस्ट्री है, देन वी विल स्टार्ट LT4 थेरेपी. Third one, 25-year-old primigravida present at 7 weeks of gestation, having tachycardia, sweating, palpitation, dehydration and hyperemesis. In first trimester, whenever there is hyperemesis, think of hyperthyroidism. Don't forget hyperthyroidism at that level. She has a palpable nodule near the left lower pole and free T4 2 and TSH 0.1 milli-international unit. So, for overt hyperthyroidism, it is overt one. Diagnosed during pregnancy, thionamides are the treatment of choice. And PTU is recommended during the first trimester, followed by a switch to methimazole and carbimazole in the second trimester. In the first trimester, we will give thionamide, PTU, and we will switch over to methimazole and carbimazole in second trimester. What is the dose? 100 to 150 milligram per 8 hour is the dose for PTU, and maintain TSH level 0.1 to 0.4 milliunit. In a woman on a low dose of MMI or PTU 100 to 200 milligram, ATD may be stopped, means thionamide may be stopped in this one. A pregnant woman with a palpable thyroid nodule should be evaluated by measuring serum TSH and ultrasound assessment of the neck and thyroid gland and FNAC also. If nodule is malignant in FNAC, if the report shows that it is malignant or shows rapid growth, consider surgery in the second trimester, not in first trimester. If the nodule is benign, well, no further evaluation is needed except in the cases with elevated TSH. Levothyroxine is given to normalize the TSH and follow up with USG of the neck. Follow up with USG is needed. Thyroid disease is one of the most common endocrine issue in the practice. Huge number of sufferers in India often goes undiagnosed. Role of preconception counseling, early diagnosis by universal screening and multidisciplinary care with an endocrinologist. ये जो है वो हम खुद ही ट्रीट करें ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है, हम इसमें फिजिशियन को भी इन्वॉल्व करेंगे एंड इफ नीडेड, इफ देर इज एंटीबॉडी or if there is any lump in the or goiter, then we will involve endocrinologist also. It depends upon the fattiness of the patient, obese patient, BMI, BMR, everything is, if not under control with us or with physician, we should send the patient to endocrinologist. Patient awareness and regular follow-up is necessary. If the patient is having hypothyroidism previously, before pregnancy, preconception counseling is very much necessary about the maternal risk and about fetal risk, both. So, Albert Einstein said that learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important thing is not to stop questioning. If any question is there, just go ahead.